No one invites you to your own son's wedding. No calls, no explanations, just a text 2 days later asking for the keys to the family beach house. Eleanor Hart stood frozen in her quiet kitchen, her fingers trembling as she reread the message. "Hi, Mom. Bella and I got married last weekend. Could you send the Malibu keys? No. I miss you. No, we wanted you there. Just a request for a house she built with every heartbeat, every broken dream, every sacrifice. She had poured her entire life into her family, buried her ambitions, lost a husband too soon, and now this? But Eleanor wasn't broken, not this time. She smiled, cold and calm. "I'll send a gift," she whispered. Not a key, not a blessing. Something else entirely. Something they would never see coming. The sun had barely risen over the quiet Los Angeles hills when Eleanor Hart placed her coffee cup on the counter and picked up her phone. She hadn't slept much the night before, and now a simple call from her son would unravel the stillness she had fought so hard to preserve. "Hey, Mom!" Michael's voice was cheerful, casual, the kind of voice you'd use to order coffee, not to break your mother's heart. "I wanted to ask, Bella and I are moving back from the honeymoon this weekend. We'd like to stay at the Malibu house for a while. Could you send over the keys?" There was a pause. Eleanor blinked twice, thinking she had missed something. "I didn't realize you two were married already," she said, trying to keep her voice from cracking. "Oh, yeah, it was kind of last minute. Super small, nothing formal. We just wanted something simple, you know?" He chuckled, like it was a charming quirk. "No invitation, no photo, no notice, just this." "I see," Eleanor replied slowly, walking toward the window. From her vantage point, she could see the faint outline of the Malibu coastline in the distance. That house wasn't just a place. It was where Felix, her late husband, had sketched out storyboards on napkins, where Michael had learned to walk, where they had celebrated every birthday and mourned every loss. "Bella doesn't feel super comfortable doing a big family thing right now," Michael added. "You know, she gets anxious. She's very private." Eleanor's lips pressed together. "I thought maybe we could do a small dinner, just the three of us. I'd love to meet her properly, to celebrate the two of you." Michael hesitated. "That's kind, Mom, but Bella's not really ready for that kind of meeting. She's sensitive about that stuff. She says family expectations make her nervous." "Family expectations?" Eleanor stared at the photo on the wall, Felix holding baby Michael on the beach. Her throat tightened. For 30 years, she had poured everything into this family. Every script rejected, every dream deferred, every late night spent editing footage or reworking budgets, all for them. She swallowed the lump in her throat. "All right," she said, voice measured. "I'll send you a gift." Michael didn't notice the shift in her tone. "Thanks, Mom. That'd be great." They hung up. The silence that followed felt deafening. Eleanor didn't move for a long time. She simply stood there, hand on the counter, letting the weight of it all settle in. She wasn't hurt by the lack of a wedding invite. No, it was deeper than that. She was no longer essential, not even necessary. She was inconvenient. She walked slowly to the hallway, opening a closet lined with old photo albums, scripts, film reels, remnants of a life she had paused indefinitely. Her fingers traced a worn leather album. Inside were pictures from their first visit to Malibu. Felix sunburnt and smiling, Michael toddling through sand dunes, her own face radiant with hope. That house wasn't just beachfront property. It was memory, history, love, layered in drywall and sunlight. And now, someone she had never met wanted the keys, wanted access to that sacred space, without even looking her in the eyes. No, not yet. Eleanor returned to the kitchen, picked up her pen, and began writing a note. "My dearest Michael and Bella, congratulations on your marriage. May it be full of the kind of enduring love your father and I once knew. The kind built not on convenience, but commitment. Enclosed is a small gift to begin your journey together. It is not the key to Malibu, but something I hope you'll find valuable in the long run. With all my love, Mom. She folded the note carefully and tucked it into a small silver box. Not a house key. Not yet. That house and everything it represented would have to wait for someone who understood its weight. Eleanor stared out the window again, the horizon shimmering with morning light. They had no idea what kind of woman she really was, but soon they would. 2 days later, Eleanor sat at her breakfast table, eyes locked on the glowing screen of her iPad. She wasn't one to browse social media, but after receiving Michael's call, curiosity had tugged at her like a loose thread. Against her usual restraint, she clicked into the only Instagram account she knew was linked to Michael's life, Bella's. She scrolled past filtered photos of lattes, soft-lit selfies, and cryptic quotes about trusting your journey. But then, one image froze her hand mid-scroll. Bella, dressed in a flowing silk gown, posed against a stunning beachfront backdrop. The caption read, "New beginnings in paradise. NARC partnerships, dream space, Malibu vibes." Eleanor zoomed in. The house wasn't theirs, but it looked strikingly similar to the Malibu property. For someone so private, Bella had no qualms about showcasing luxury homes, probably borrowed or rented for her image. A sinking suspicion coiled in Eleanor's chest. Was the Malibu house just another set piece for Bella's personal branding? A trophy? A stage? She saved the post and stared at it for a long time. Later that afternoon, over tea with her neighbor, Eleanor mentioned Bella in passing. That was when the second ripple hit. "Bella Morgan?" her friend asked, lifting an eyebrow. "Isn't she the one who sued her fiancé a few years back? Some drama about investments gone wrong?" Eleanor stiffened. "I don't follow. Do you know her?" "I just remember reading something years ago. A woman accused her ex of stealing money from a startup they co-owned. Whole thing vanished after a quiet settlement. She disappeared from the scene, changed her look. Same name, though." After the neighbor left, Eleanor sat still for nearly an hour. She wasn't quick to judge. She had endured enough scrutiny as a woman in film to know that stories could be twisted. But she had also spent decades developing instincts, both as a mother and a producer, and her instincts now screamed. She opened her laptop. A few hours and several online databases later, she found it. Isabella Morgan had in fact been involved in a civil dispute 5 years ago with a man named Jared Kim. The details were murky. Allegations of misappropriated funds, false promises, emotional manipulation. The case was settled out of court. But what struck Eleanor most was the pattern. Isabella had changed addresses, phone numbers, and social media handles multiple times. She rebranded, repackaged, re-emerged. Just like now. Eleanor's hands moved before her heart caught up. She opened her contacts and dialed an old name. Margaret Lee, family attorney and someone she hadn't spoken to in months. "Margaret, it's Eleanor. I need your help." The next morning, she sat across from Margaret in a polished office overlooking downtown LA. She explained everything. The rushed wedding, the house request, the photo, the legal past. Margaret listened without interruption, then leaned forward. "Do you want to contest the marriage? Fight it?" "No," Eleanor said softly. "I want to protect the legacy Felix and I built, the Malibu house, the trust, the copyrights, the archives, everything." Margaret nodded. "We can restructure the trust. Freeze disbursements, transfer direct control temporarily. Michael won't lose access forever, but he won't be able to sign anything over without your approval." "Do it," Eleanor said. "Lock everything down." Her voice didn't tremble. On the drive home, Eleanor felt the ache in her chest lessen, not disappear, but shift. It was no longer the sharp sting of betrayal. It had become something colder, sharper, strategic. She wasn't just a grieving mother now. She was a protector, a strategist, A woman who had lived long enough to know that silence, when used well, could be more powerful than any scream. Later that night, she pulled out a dusty folder from her bookshelf, one marked Story Concepts. Inside were abandoned scripts, notes from years past, unfinished pitches. She smiled bitterly. Funny, she thought. In the end, maybe her greatest script wasn't for the screen. It was this moment, this unfolding story, this battle for something bigger than real estate or inheritance. It was the battle for truth, for recognition, for her name to mean something again, not in Hollywood, but in her own family. She lit a candle, placed the folder on her desk, and began drafting a new plan, not as a producer, not as a widow, not even as a mother, but as Eleanor Hart, the woman they had underestimated. The box Eleanor selected was elegant, silver with gold trim, lined with velvet inside. She placed it gently on the dining table, beside a candle and a faded photo of Felix holding Michael on his 5th birthday. The past and present sat side by side, equally fragile. Inside the box, she placed 2 things: a printed copy of the updated trust documents, restructured to ensure no major assets could be moved without her explicit approval, and a handwritten letter. My dearest Michael and Bella, in every union there are gifts that sparkle and gifts that stay unseen. This is not a key to a house. That home holds more than walls and views. It holds decades of sacrifice, love, and memories that cannot be exchanged like a favor. It is not mine to give, not yet. What I offer you instead is a document that protects our legacy. Your legacy, too, if you choose to carry it with respect. People only get to keep what they truly understand and honor. With love and clarity, Mom. She sealed the letter with wax, as she used to do when mailing scripts to studios. She wanted it to feel personal, intentional. This wasn't punishment, it was preservation. A day later, the box was delivered to Michael's apartment. The courier texted to confirm it was received. Then, nothing. No thank you. No call. No text. Just silence. Eleanor waited through the rest of the day with her phone nearby. Every vibration made her breath hitch, but it was always a weather alert, a spam message, or someone else entirely. At night, she sat alone with her tea and tried to imagine what Michael was thinking. Was he angry? Confused? Embarrassed? Was Bella already spinning the gift as an insult? A rejection? The uncertainty ate away at her. By day 3, Eleanor questioned herself. Had she been too cold? Too strategic? She'd always believed in boundaries, in foresight. But this was her son. Was she punishing him for loving the wrong woman? She walked into the living room and sat before the upright piano no one had touched in years. Her fingers, stiff with time and disuse, pressed a few hesitant keys, a minor chord, then another. Her body remembered a song she hadn't played since Felix died. That night, she dreamed of a dinner table filled with laughter. Michael still a teenager, Ella and Lily running through the hallway, Felix refilling her wine glass and winking at her from across the table. The dream felt real until she reached to touch Felix's hand and woke up gripping empty sheets. Morning light broke through the curtains as she sat up in bed, her breath catching with the realization. She missed her family. The real one. The one she used to know. She wasn't mourning the silence. She was mourning the vanishing of a time when her presence was essential, even taken for granted. She opened her phone again. Still no message from Michael. Out of impulse, she clicked Bella's Instagram account. A new story had been posted. Bella smiling at a brunch table, clinking glasses with friends. The caption read, "Starting this chapter with gratitude, blessed new beginnings." No mention of Eleanor, no tag, no gratitude that included her. She stared at the screen, then closed the app. Her pulse slowed, but her chest remained tight. Felix would have known what to say, she thought. He always had a way of bringing clarity to complex emotions, of reminding her that silence wasn't always malice. Sometimes it was confusion, immaturity, even fear. She rose and went into the den, where his journals were still shelved in order. She pulled out one and opened it to a random page. It read, "When legacy becomes a burden, it was never understood to begin with." She exhaled sharply. Michael had grown up in comfort, in structure, in the warmth of two parents who gave everything, but maybe she hadn't shown him what that cost. Maybe, in her silence and service, she had taught him to see strength as invincibility and love as obligation. She sat down at her desk and pulled out a new notebook. Page 1. "If I am to be remembered, let it be in truth, not perfection." She didn't know what would happen next, but she was done waiting by the phone. It was just after sunset when Eleanor received the message. She was watering the orchids on her patio, trying to distract herself with something delicate, something alive. Her phone buzzed once. A text from Nina, the neighbor 3 houses down, an old friend with sharp eyes and an even sharper memory. "Hey, Eleanor, I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but a few nights before the wedding, I saw Bella meeting some guy by her car. Not Michael. Looked intense. Thought you should know." Eleanor's hand paused over the soil. Her first instinct was disbelief. Nina liked to stir pots, especially when wine was involved. But Nina also didn't lie. Not about things that mattered. Still, Eleanor didn't want to believe it. The idea that Bella had entertained another man just before marrying her son, it felt lurid, dramatic, convenient, but too messy to be true. She replied with a simple, "Thanks. Can you describe him?" Tall, wore glasses, kind of artsy looking, black leather jacket, maybe early 40s? Eleanor stared at the message. Something about that description scratched at her memory. She didn't sleep much that night. At 2 a.m., she found herself pulling out old photo drives, external hard drives from Felix's film sets. It was a strange impulse, but she'd learned long ago to trust her instincts when they whispered. She clicked through folders, behind-the-scenes photos, crew snapshots, wrap party candids. Then one file caught her eye, Whisper House Extras. It had been one of Felix's smaller projects, a psychological thriller that barely made it past post-production before his death. She remembered the shoot well. It was the last one they'd worked on together. The file opened and image after image populated the screen. Background actors posing, laughing, eating pizza between takes. And then, there he was. In the far left corner of one shot, standing close to a brunette woman in a cream blouse, the man from Nina's description. He was younger then, but the features were unmistakable. Glasses, that air of artistic brooding, and the woman next to him. Eleanor leaned closer. The photo was grainy, but the smile was familiar. Her posture, her cheekbones, the hair was darker, shorter. But Eleanor's gut clenched. It was Bella. Only back then, her badge didn't say Isabella Morgan. It read Carly Jane Rivers. Eleanor pulled up IMDb and searched for the film's cast. Carly Jane Rivers, credited as Silent Maid number 3. A nothing role, but the name stuck. She searched the alias online. An old blog surfaced, abandoned. The writing was stream of consciousness, posts about navigating fake relationships and performing your truth. At the bottom of one entry, a photo appeared. Carly standing in front of the Whisper House set trailer. Eleanor's heart pounded. Bella, Carly, had once been on set with Felix. She had been there years before she met Michael, years before the Malibu house was even listed in magazines as a legacy estate. Was it all coincidence? Or had she known exactly who Felix was, who Eleanor was? Had she planned this? Eleanor's breath grew shallow. Was this marriage to Michael just a piece of a long, deliberate puzzle? She remembered one evening years ago when Felix came home from set talking about a strange young woman who had asked him a lot of personal questions. Not about the film, but about his home life. Some young actress with too much curiosity and not enough lines, he'd said, half laughing. Could it have been her? Had Bella been circling their lives long before Michael ever brought her to brunch? Eleanor sat back, the laptop screen burning her eyes. The air felt thin, like the walls were closing in. No, this wasn't just about a rushed marriage or a missed invitation. This was calculated, precise. It had started long before Michael ever fell in love. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with something colder. A quiet, simmering rage, not at Bella, but at herself, for not seeing it sooner. All the signs were there: the forced privacy, the urgency, the carefully curated image online, the refusal to meet, the hunger in Bella's eyes masked behind fake humility. Eleanor reached for her notebook again. This time, she didn't write reflections. She made a list: names, dates, roles, connections, a map of something bigger than heartbreak. A strategy was forming. The next morning, Eleanor opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook, one of Felix's old industry address books. She flipped past directors, producers, lighting techs, until she found the name she was looking for: Julian Black. Julian had once been the kind of private investigator studios hired when stars got messy, when tabloid scandals needed to be cleaned up before premiere week. He had retired early, but he still answered Eleanor's calls. She was one of the few people he respected enough to never ask why. An hour later, over coffee at a tucked-away cafe in Pasadena, she explained what she needed. "Her name now is Isabella Morgan," Eleanor said, sliding a folded note with the other names: Carly Jane Rivers, Bella Ray. "She married my son under the Morgan name, but I believe she's been watching us longer than we realized." Julian skimmed the note, his brows lifting just slightly. "You think she married Michael for access?" "I don't know," Eleanor replied, "but I want to." Julian nodded slowly. "Give me 3 days." He took the note and disappeared as silently as he arrived. Eleanor sat at the cafe for another hour, stirring the same cup of tea, eyes distant. 3 days passed like slow, heavy breaths. On the 4th morning, a plain envelope slid through her mail slot. Inside, a thick printed dossier neatly bound with a small note. "You were right to ask." JB Eleanor carried the file to her kitchen table and sat down, her fingers trembling slightly as she turned the first page. Name history: Carly Jane Rivers. Used between 2015-2017, Bella Ray, 2017-2019, Isabella Morgan, 2019 present. Each identity came with a different address, different set of online personas, and a trail of businesses started and shuttered within 18 months. Eleanor flipped through reports of LLC filings, tax documents, screenshots of deleted Instagram accounts, with thousands of followers, each carefully cultivated, then abandoned. Civil litigations: Carly Rivers versus Jared Kim, 2016. Lawsuit for fraud and misappropriation of funds in a failed production startup. Settled privately: Bella Ray versus Sarah Lynn, 2018. Dispute over stolen intellectual property, dismissed without cause. Isabella Morgan versus Aiden Sharp, 2020. Alleged harassment and defamation. Case dropped. Each case was a shadow, something murky and ungraspable. Patterns of conflict that always ended in silence, never clarity. But the thread was clear. Bella reinvented herself every time consequences caught up. Eleanor sat back in her chair, letting the cold truth settle in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Bella wasn't confused or emotionally guarded. She was strategic, calculating. And now, married to Michael, with access to his business contacts, his last name, and soon, if left unchecked, his inheritance. Eleanor felt the floor under her spirit shift. For all her experience reading people, she had missed this. She had wanted to believe Michael saw something genuine in Bella. Maybe he did, but it didn't matter. She flipped to the last page of the dossier, a map of Bella's known addresses, with lines connecting each to key professional figures: directors, funders, tech founders. Eleanor recognized 2 names from Felix's inner circle. It all felt orchestrated. She closed the file and walked into her study. The late afternoon sun streamed through the blinds in long, angled lines. Dust floated in the light, suspended like unsaid words. From her drawer, she took a crisp sheet of stationery and uncapped her favorite pen. Dear Michael, love is not wrong. Falling in love is not wrong. But blindness is. If you love her, truly love her, I will not stand in your way. I've watched you grow with pride for too many years to question the size of your heart. But I need you to ask yourself something. Do you love Bella, or do you love who she's pretending to be? I won't demand answers. But if she is who I fear, then understand this. I will be the last person standing between her and everything your father and I built. Not because I don't trust you, but because I know what it cost us. Love. Mom. She folded the letter and placed it in a sealed envelope, tucking it between two photo albums where she knew Michael would eventually look. Not now, but someday. She wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. First, she needed more than truth. She needed timing. Eleanor didn't expect another message from Julian so soon, but 2 days after the dossier arrived, her phone buzzed with a new encrypted email. The subject line read, "Addendum, urgent." Her stomach knotted. She opened the file, and there, clipped neatly in a PDF, was a photograph. The same man Nina had seen Bella with, the one Eleanor had identified from the Whisper House photos. But this time, he wasn't in the shadows. He was at a ribbon-cutting event, shaking hands with a group of young entrepreneurs. Beside him stood Michael, smiling, holding a glass of champagne. The caption from the business journal below read, "Michael Hart and business partner Adam Vance launch Haven Strategies, a digital marketing firm aimed at socially conscious brands." Adam Vance, not an ex, not an actor, a partner, the partner. Julian's note was concise. Found this through cross-referencing Bella's IP logs and contact history. Adam Vance is listed as co-founder of Michael's company. He and Bella have overlapping financial accounts going back 4 years under alias emails. One was linked to a shared Airbnb venture, terminated months before she met Michael. Vance's LLC received 2 silent investments traced to Bella's previous aliases, highly irregular. Eleanor's heart thundered. The ground beneath her sense of understanding cracked. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. Bella had strategically embedded someone, Adam, into Michael's professional life, a Trojan horse in business, a long con. This was bigger than marriage. This was about money, control, infiltration. The signs, once faint and disjointed, now assembled into a chilling picture. Bella and Adam had known each other for years. They had partnered in various ventures under fake names, operating in quiet, intentional loops. When those ventures failed or caught scrutiny, they vanished, rebranded, resurfaced. Michael wasn't just collateral, he was the next golden goose. Eleanor dropped her head into her hands. There were different kinds of grief, the kind that came with death and the kind that came with revelation. This was both. She was mourning the image of her son as safe, independent, clear-eyed, mourning the illusion that her silence was protecting him. She stood, paced the room, her thoughts racing ahead of her feet. Bella was poised to gain everything. With Michael legally bound to her and Adam embedded in his business, they could hollow out the family legacy from both ends, personal and professional. And Michael, in his desire to prove his independence, wouldn't see it coming unless someone stopped them, unless someone said enough, that someone would be her, but not through confrontation. Not yet. This had to be precise. Eleanor opened her calendar and her notes. There was an event scheduled the following weekend, a private post-wedding celebration at the Malibu house. Just family and close friends. Bella's idea, supposedly, as a way to finally bring everyone together. Eleanor hadn't been officially invited, but Michael had mentioned it vaguely, almost as if unsure whether she'd attend. She'd attend. Oh, she would absolutely attend. And when she did, she'd be prepared, not with emotion, not with accusations, but with truth, documented, ordered, delivered with grace sharp enough to cut through any facade. She called Margaret Lee and scheduled an urgent meeting. "I want everything legally documented," she said, "not just the trust. I want to protect the business shares Felix left behind, the family archive, and the remaining rights to his scripts. We need to create a new layer of security, one that requires my direct approval for any major business moves made by Michael or in his name." Margaret, ever measured, raised a brow. "Is this about Bella?" "It's about foresight," Eleanor said coldly, "and justice." She hung up and turned to her notebook once more. This time, she didn't write in reflection. She made a checklist. Legal restructuring, in progress, final confrontation, Malibu. It would be a beautiful day, she thought. The sea air, the smiling faces, the curated illusions of unity. And then, just before the toast perhaps, or maybe after dessert, she would hand them the truth, tied not in ribbons but in timelines, bank records, and signatures. Her gift would not be gentle, but it would be unforgettable. The invitations had gone out quietly, just a small, intimate celebration for Michael and Bella at the Malibu house. Friends from college, a few colleagues, some of Bella's influencer circle. Family, technically, wasn't required or welcomed. Eleanor had not received one, but she didn't need an invitation to walk into her own home. The evening sun cast golden light over the cliffs as guests arrived, champagne glasses clinking beneath the canopy of fairy lights. Music played softly, a curated playlist full of indie love songs that sounded expensive but empty. Every detail screamed curated perfection. Eleanor stepped out of her car in navy silk, hair pinned neatly, a single pearl at each ear. No makeup save for bold lipstick, the same shade she wore the day she married Felix. She walked through the front gate of the Malibu property with the calm of someone reclaiming sacred ground. Conversations faltered, eyes turned. Michael looked up from the patio bar, his expression flickering from surprise to unease. He walked toward her, hands stiff at his sides. "Mom," he said, voice taut. "I didn't think you were coming." "I wasn't invited," she said softly, but her gaze didn't waver. "But this is still my home, and I have a gift for you both." Bella approached slowly, smile tense and performative. "Eleanor, it's so brave of you to come." Eleanor nodded. "Bravery isn't required to walk into your own house." She reached into her handbag and removed a small black velvet box. "For you both," she said, handing it to Michael. "Don't open it now. Wait until everyone's gone." Bella took a half step back. Michael looked down at the box, puzzled. "What is it?" "Just a little clarity," Eleanor replied. She stayed for 20 minutes, long enough to be seen, not enough to engage. She greeted old friends, exchanged small talk, sipped water. Then she left, slipping into the twilight like a ghost, reclaiming her name. Back at her house, she sat by the window, heart pounding against her ribs. The box held a USB drive. On it, a recording. Julian had obtained it from a shared cloud folder linked to Adam's email. A voice memo, never deleted, captured in a moment of arrogance. Bella's voice, unmistakable. "He's easy to steer. You just have to make him feel like he's choosing everything. Michael doesn't want a partner, he wants a mirror. So I reflect what he wants and he gives me what I need." A pause. Then Adam. "And what about his mom? She's sharp." "She's ancient," Bella scoffed. "Emotional, sentimental. Give her the right look, she folds. Michael trusts her blind, though. So if she pushes too hard, we'll use that. Turn it into drama. Make him feel like he has to choose." Silence. Then soft laughter, then static. Eleanor had listened to it once. Once was enough. At midnight, her phone rang. It was Michael. She didn't answer. Instead, she let it ring, then checked her voicemail minutes later. His voice was raw, broken. "I heard it. All of it. I don't even know what to say. She's gone. She left after I confronted her. Just disappeared. No note, no explanation, just her ring on the bathroom counter. He paused, then his voice cracked further. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I would have believed you, maybe not at first, but I would have listened. I'm so sorry, Mom. The message cut off. Eleanor sat in the dark, staring at nothing. She should have felt vindicated, but all she felt was grief. She had exposed the lie, revealed the truth, saved her son. But in the process, she had watched his heart break in real time, and she couldn't decide what hurt more, the betrayal he endured or the silence she had chosen as her weapon. The next morning, the tabloids ran with it. Bella Morgan disappears days after Malibu celebration. Mysterious USB gift at heart party raises eyebrows. Power couple implodes. What went wrong? Eleanor didn't read them. She turned off the TV, muted the notifications, drew the curtains. Because in the quiet that followed, she finally admitted something to herself. She hadn't just been fighting for justice. She had been fighting for acknowledgement, for relevance, for proof that her instincts, her sacrifices, her wisdom still mattered. And though she had won this battle, it came with a cost. She had cracked the illusion, but left her son standing in the rubble. 2 days after Bella vanished, Eleanor thought the storm had passed. Michael hadn't reached out again. There were no calls, no knocks at the door, just silence. And in that silence, she allowed herself the smallest sip of relief. Not joy, never joy, but a faint breath of quiet knowing. I did what I had to do. Then the internet exploded. It began with a single video, Bella, pale-faced, sitting cross-legged on a white couch, dressed in a loose gray sweater, her eyes red, voice trembling. I wasn't going to say anything, she whispered into the camera, but I can't stay silent anymore. I've spent the past few weeks being emotionally attacked, gaslit, and pushed to leave my own marriage, all because I didn't fit into someone else's idea of a perfect family. A pause, a shaky inhale. I was never accepted. I tried so hard. I showed up with love, with respect. But Michael's mother made it clear that no matter what I did, I would never be good enough. She undermined me. She twisted things. She used fear and guilt to turn my husband against me. Tears ran down her cheeks. I didn't run away because I was guilty. I ran because I was afraid. I've been afraid for months. The pressure, the manipulation, the emotional violence. I'm not the villain in this story. Fade to black. Within hours, it was everywhere. Bella had over 300,000 followers across platforms, influencer reposts, reaction videos, empathy reels. The hashtags began trending by nightfall. Stand with Bella, detumir toxic mother-in-law, let us love freely, and worse. Eleanor exposed clips from the Malibu party surfaced. Eleanor walking in unannounced, the stiff expressions, the whispered glances. Armchair analysts picked apart her presence, tone, body language. They questioned her motives, her agenda. She walked into their celebration just to sabotage it. Who brings a USB to a wedding? She's probably bitter her son got married without her. This is classic narcissistic control. Eleanor stopped scrolling when someone tagged her in a tweet that read, "She may not have screamed, but silence can be violence too." The sentence echoed in her skull like a gong. By morning, reporters camped near her front gate. Michael refused interviews, but his silence only fueled speculation. Some thought he was ashamed. Others claimed he had cut ties with a toxic parent. The public, in its infinite hunger for binary heroes and villains, had made its decision. Bella was the victim. Eleanor was the tyrant. She shut down her social media, turned off her landline, drew the blinds. But nothing could block out the surge of doubt crawling beneath her skin. She stood in her kitchen, the same one where she had once warmed bottles for Michael, cut birthday cakes, planned anniversary dinners. The silence now felt cavernous, mocking. Maybe she'd gone too far. Maybe the recordings, the timing, the calculated reveal, it was too cold, too harsh. Maybe Bella hadn't been entirely lying in that video. Maybe she had felt threatened. Eleanor sat down slowly, her legs weak beneath her. The marble of the countertop felt ice cold beneath her palms. What if she had become the monster? She thought of Felix. What would he have done? Would he have protected her? Or stepped in sooner? Or whispered caution when she first began to investigate Bella? She looked up at the old film posters on her study wall. Her name, in fine print, always second to Felix's. She had lived her life supporting others, creating in the shadows. She'd never wanted fame, only recognition from the ones who mattered. But now, even that was turning to ash. She reached for the journal she'd begun during the investigation, flipping past pages of lists, timelines, quotes, until she reached a blank one. She wrote, "They loved me best when I was silent, and now that I've spoken, they call me cruel." She stared at the words, then crossed them out. Underneath, she tried again. "Perhaps I made mistakes, but I never made them out of hate." She didn't cry, she didn't scream, but she did something she hadn't done since Felix's funeral. She climbed into bed at 3 p.m. and didn't get up for the rest of the day. The weight wasn't just grief. It was the heaviness of being misunderstood, miscast in a story she didn't write, but could no longer escape. The headlines faded, the comments slowed, algorithms moved on, but Eleanor Hart didn't wait for the noise to die. She packed her life into 15 boxes, sold the house she had lived in for over 3 decades, and vanished from every platform that once knew her name. No farewell posts, no statements, no counter-narratives, only silence. She retreated to the place where no one looked for her, the old family cabin in Vermont. Nestled between birch trees and quiet, slow-moving fog, the cabin was a piece of Felix she had kept secret, even from Michael. It was the first property they bought together when he got his first directing deal. Back then, it was barely insulated. The roof leaked in spring, and the fireplace only half worked. But they had loved it. Now, with a few repairs and a lifetime of distance, it became her sanctuary. No cell service, no cameras, just a garden patch and a writing desk that faced the forest. Eleanor began each morning with black coffee and dirt under her fingernails. She pulled weeds, planted herbs, trimmed rose bushes that hadn't bloomed in years. Her body remembered labor. Her spine ached, her hands blistered, but there was a strange peace in the repetition. In the evenings, she returned to the desk and began writing. Not to the world, not to vindicate herself, but to remember. The pages filled slowly, then all at once. Notebooks lined up like seasons. She wrote about the first day she met Felix, how he spilled coffee on her script and offered to buy her a new one, only to read it overnight and tell her, "This should be a film." She wrote about holding Michael for the first time and how the weight of him felt both miraculous and terrifying. She wrote about the Malibu house, about the rejections, about the long years when she was neither wife nor artist, only function. But she also wrote about joy, laughter, soft moments at dawn, the smell of Felix's cologne on her pillow, the sound of Michael's feet running down the hallway for Christmas. No one would read these pages, but she needed to place them somewhere outside herself, to witness her own life before the world rewrote it. It had been almost 6 weeks since she left LA, when she heard the knock, a single rap, then another. She set down her pen, heartbeat steady but uncertain. No one came to the cabin. She opened the door. Michael stood on the porch, disheveled, tired, holding the hand of a girl with long auburn curls and cautious eyes, Ella, her granddaughter. Michael didn't speak at first, neither did she. Then he exhaled. "Hi, Mom." Eleanor opened the door wider. "You're early for harvest season." He smiled faintly, but his eyes were wet. "We needed somewhere quiet." Eleanor looked down at Ella. The girl clutched a small overnight bag and a sketchbook. "Can we stay a few days?" Michael asked. Eleanor nodded. "Of course." But inside, she made tea while Michael settled Ella on the couch with a blanket and old coloring books from a drawer. The fire crackled softly. They sat at the table, mother and son, without pretense. "I left her," Michael said. "A month ago." Eleanor waited. "She didn't just lie to me, she planned it. Every part of it. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just held on, it would settle. But it didn't. And after the video, after the way people treated you, I couldn't look at myself anymore." She watched his shoulders cave, the weight of failure finally exhaling. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. Eleanor reached across the table, placed her hand over his. "You were never the enemy, Michael." His throat caught. "I believed her over you." "You believed love," she said. "It's not a sin." Silence folded around them again, but this time it was warm. "She said you were trying to control me," he added. "But I see now. You were the only one trying to protect me without strings." Eleanor didn't answer. There was nothing left to prove. Instead, she poured him more tea and asked if he still played piano. He laughed through a tear. "Not well." "We'll fix that," she said. That night, after Ella fell asleep curled against the cabin dog, Eleanor pulled out an extra journal and handed it to Michael. "For when you're ready," she said. He turned the first page. It was blank. He nodded. "I think I will be." Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees. Inside, the silence finally began to feel like peace. They spent the next day in the quiet rhythm of the cabin. Michael chopped wood. Ella helped Eleanor knead bread, their hands coated in flour, laughter slow to return, but real when it came. It felt almost normal, almost like time had never fractured. That evening, as the stars pricked through the Vermont sky, Michael lingered on the porch, sipping tea from an old chipped mug. Eleanor joined him, wrapping herself in a thick shawl, her silence open. Michael looked down, turning the cup in his hands. "The recording you gave me," he said slowly, "was the thing that broke it. But not because I didn't believe in Bella. It's because I finally had to believe in you." Eleanor stayed quiet, her breath fogging in the cool night air. "I needed time," he continued, "to be sure, to check what was real. I didn't want to come running back if there was even a chance I was wrong. I couldn't risk hurting you more than I already had." Her fingers tensed around the shawl. "I watched it twice," he said. "Then I started noticing everything. How she always deflected. How Adam would show up in meetings I never scheduled. How money moved through the business without explanation." He paused. "I found accounts. Funds funneled through shell companies I never authorized. Bella signed for me once, faked my name. I didn't know until my accountant flagged it weeks ago." Eleanor turned to him now, her expression unreadable. "That's when I knew. Really knew." "And what did you do?" she asked softly. "I froze everything, pulled out, terminated Adam's access, filed an internal audit." Eleanor nodded slowly but didn't speak. Michael hesitated. "You probably already knew, didn't you?" She finally met his gaze. "I suspected, but it wasn't mine to act on." He looked down. "She's not missing, Mom." Eleanor raised a brow. "She's under investigation. White-collar crimes division. One of her former ventures flagged her. Turns out she's been skimming from investors for years. It caught up to her." Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. "How do you know that?" Michael took a slow breath. "Because I got a call from a federal investigator 3 days ago. Said someone sent in an anonymous package. Bank records, legal ties, shared emails between her and Adam. All time-stamped, all cross-referenced." Eleanor didn't react. "I asked who submitted it," Michael said. "They wouldn't say." She sipped her tea. "I guess I don't need to ask." A long silence stretched between them, not heavy this time, just deep. "You never went public," he murmured. "You never blasted her, never retaliated." "No," Eleanor said. "That would have made her the martyr. She thrives in noise. I chose stillness." Michael swallowed hard. "You saved me," he whispered. Eleanor shook her head. "I reminded you who you were. The rest you did yourself." He wiped his eyes quickly, as if ashamed of the emotion. Then, from the folds of her shawl, she pulled out a leather-bound journal, thicker than the rest, worn but dignified. She placed it in his lap. Michael looked down at it. "What is this?" "It's not evidence," she said. "It's not strategy. It's me." He opened it, saw the first page, the woman they never asked about. She stood then, leaving him alone with the book. Inside, he would find the story of her life, not the public one, not the mother's scripted version, but the raw, personal one. From the young filmmaker who gave up a career to raise him, to the woman who once considered disappearing entirely, the nights she mourned Felix in silence, the sacrifices that weren't grand, just persistent, the doubts, the pain, the pride. Michael sat in the dark for a long time, reading page after page, his breath catching every few minutes. When he finally came back inside, Eleanor was already in bed, lights off. He didn't wake her. He didn't need to. Some forgiveness doesn't require words. Some love doesn't need arms wrapped around it. Sometimes the deepest peace is found in quiet acknowledgement, the kind that says, "I see you now. I see everything." Spring arrived early in Vermont that year. Snow melted before April, coaxing wildflowers from the stubborn earth. For the first time in months, Eleanor felt her bones soften, rather than resist. The thaw came not only to the land, but to her life. Michael and Ella had stayed longer than planned. What was meant to be a weekend retreat stretched into weeks, then months. Michael began helping around the cabin, fixing broken gutters, organizing tools, even setting up a solar panel system. Ella made friends with the wildlife, naming birds, drawing squirrels in her sketch pad. It was as though life had pressed pause. And in the pause, something truer had bloomed. Then one morning, as Eleanor was trimming basil in the garden, Michael approached, laptop in hand, expression unusually serious. "I want to show you something," he said. They sat on the porch, the laptop whirred softly as a web page loaded. On the screen, a clean, elegant layout still under construction. At the top, a banner read, "Felix Hart behind the camera." Below it, thumbnails for videos, script excerpts, archived behind-the-scenes photos. Tabs labeled Legacy, Mentorship, Family Archives. Eleanor's breath hitched. "You built this?" she asked. "I'm building it," Michael said. "Ella helps with design. I've been digitizing Dad's old reels, going through his journals. There's so much that no one ever saw." Eleanor blinked at the screen. It had been years since anyone had spoken Felix's name with that kind of reverence. His memory had mostly lived in the corners of their house, in old storyboards, fading award plaques. Michael continued, "I want to create a digital documentary, something accessible. His students, collaborators, people who admired his work but never knew the whole story. Not just the films, him, the man behind the scenes." Eleanor smiled, a small ache blooming in her chest. "He always said the real magic happened between takes," she murmured. Michael nodded, "Which is why I need your help." He opened a blank section of the site marked Narration. "There's a voice missing," he said. "Yours." Eleanor turned to him, surprised. "You were the one beside him, from the first pitch to the last frame. You held the whole story. You were always in the margins, but you were everything." Her lips parted slightly. "I'd be honored," he added quietly, "if you'd write the introduction, whatever you want. Doesn't have to be fancy, just you." That night, long after the others were asleep, Eleanor sat in the quiet cabin office staring at the blinking cursor on a white screen. Her fingers hovered above the keys. For a long time, she couldn't start. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because there was too much. Years of partnership, sacrifice, creation, grief. She remembered the night Felix proposed, kneeling with a folded script instead of a ring. The nights they argued over dialogue, only to fall asleep with notes on their pillows. the way he believed in her talent, yet asked her to step back when Michael was born, the way she said yes, the way she never complained, the way it quietly broke her. She remembered his funeral, the way people praised him with empty metaphors, how no one asked how she was managing, because she wasn't the headline, she was the footnote, the woman who made it all work, off stage. But now there was a blank screen, and for once no one telling her how to frame the scene. She began to type. This is not a story about fame. It is not a tribute to red carpets or director's chairs. This is a story about what happens between takes, between lives, about a man who created beauty and the quiet hands that held it in place. Felix Hart was a visionary, but he was also a father, a husband, a man who doubted himself more often than the world ever saw. He was sharp and flawed and kind and restless. He asked for silence when he wrote, and in that silence, I built our life. This story isn't just about him. It's about the life we made together, about the dreams paused, the love held steady, the years spent in the background so something else could shine. I tell it now not because I want recognition, but because I want truth. Let this be the record, not of perfection, but of presence. She sat back, breath catching. The words had come like water breaking a dam, and with them came tears, not sharp, but soft. Not grief, but release. The next morning, she handed the file to Michael. He read it once, then again. Then he looked at her, eyes full of something deeper than apology. Thank you, he whispered. Eleanor just nodded. She didn't need praise, didn't need a headline. The legacy she had built was already alive, growing in her son's spine, in her granddaughter's laughter, in the way the truth finally found the light. The screening was held in a small private cinema just off a quiet street in downtown Burlington. There were no flashing lights, no press releases, no red carpet. Only 30 hand-picked guests, former collaborators of Felix, students, close friends, and family. Ella had made invitations by hand. White paper, rough edges, simple black ink that read, "Behind the camera, a legacy remembered." Eleanor sat in the back row. Michael stood at the front for a moment to thank everyone for coming. His words were simple, his voice calm. This isn't just about the films, he said. It's about what it takes to build a story, to support a vision, to hold it steady when no one's watching. Then the lights dimmed. The documentary played. It wasn't flashy. It didn't follow the usual rules. There were no slow-motion award speeches, no glamorized montages. Just quiet clips, Felix giving directions on set, laughing between takes, scribbling notes on a napkin, holding Michael as a baby on his lap during an editing session. Interwoven throughout were interviews, short, reverent moments from actors and editors, costume designers and assistants. But the most powerful parts were not spoken. They were written. Eleanor's narration, her words layered between transitions, set softly against piano notes, turning the film from a retrospective into something deeper, something sacred. Each time her voice was heard in print, it appeared on screen in white text against black background. At one point, mid-documentary, the screen faded to black and the words appeared. I was never the one in the spotlight. I was the one holding the light. And then, you don't have to be remembered by millions to have mattered to the ones who count. The room was silent, not with awkwardness, but reverence. Near the end, a final segment played, Felix's final behind-the-scenes video, filmed just 2 months before his diagnosis. He was tired, voice raspy, but smiling. My wife, he said to the camera, eyes twinkling. She's the reason anything I made ever existed. She won't tell you that, but it's true. The film faded out, and the final line appeared slowly, deliberately. This mother never needed an apology. She lived fully and proved herself quietly, relentlessly, completely. The screen dimmed. The credits rolled. No applause followed, just silence. And in that silence, Eleanor stood. not to speak, not to accept flowers or take questions. She simply walked, slowly, deliberately, up the side aisle, her heels soft against the carpet. Michael started to rise, but Ella gently touched his hand. "Let her go," she whispered. Eleanor opened the exit door and stepped outside. The night was cold, the air sharp, and ahead, the vast lake stretched into blackness, moonlight dancing across the water. She walked down the narrow wooden boardwalk behind the theater, where few followed, not because they didn't care, but because they finally understood. Inside, people remained seated, stunned, moved, changed. One crew member who had worked with Felix for years wiped his eyes and whispered, "We never knew. She was the backbone." A younger filmmaker leaned toward Michael. "Your mom, she's the story." Michael only nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Outside, Eleanor stood at the edge of the dock. She wasn't crying, she wasn't overwhelmed, she was still. For the first time in years, maybe decades, there was nothing to prove, no narrative to fight, no truth to scream over the noise. The world could interpret her however it liked, but the people who mattered, her son, her granddaughter, her late husband, they knew. The truth no longer needed defense. The truth simply stood there in a navy coat, wind in her hair, watching the night ripple with light. She breathed in the cold lake air and closed her eyes. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened. The betrayal, the humiliation, the loneliness, they had not broken her. They had chiseled her into something sharper, clearer, stronger. And now she would write for herself, not to teach, not to correct, but to remember, not to be admired, but to be known. She turned, finally, and walked back toward the building, not to re-enter, but to find Michael and Ella waiting by the side door. Michael didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just reached into his coat and handed her something. A pen. It was old. Felix. Worn around the edges. She took it, smiled faintly. "I think I've got one more story in me," she said. Ella beamed. "Can I help?" Eleanor crouched slightly, brushing a curl from her granddaughter's cheek. "Of course. You'll be my co-author." Michael opened the car door. They drove away quietly. Behind them, the theater lights dimmed. Above them, the stars blinked into place, one by one. And somewhere in the stillness of that final moment, a legacy whispered, "You don't need the world to know your name, just the ones who carry it forward."